Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us in what is now becoming a ritual thing that we do once a month or so, at least once a month. Now we're doing these tough talks, little talks, bringing some great conversation to you, and we're thankful to have people joining us and dialing in on the telephone. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for logging into Zoom and joining us this month. As Tanya and I and the staff, we were talking and kind of identifying a theme for this month. We figured, well, it's December. We're in the midst of the holidays now. How tough do we want to make it? So Tanya says, how about we do a not so tough talk? So we have a great roster of folks. And Tanya will introduce our speakers in just a minute, but I just wanted to come on and say hello, say thank you for joining us. If you logged in early, you got to hear a bit of a sound check and some of us clarifying details and making last minute, some adjustments and tweaks as we get going. There's always something new when you're on a phone call, on a conference call, on a Zoom call. And so we have to adjust a little bit here and there. So thank you for being part of that and being part of today. Just a little housekeeping. We are on what's called a webinar. So you will be able to see us. We won't be able to see you. So that is unfortunate that we can't wave and say hello, but at the same time, you don't have to worry about if you are having a sandwich or if you're mixing ingredients with Pam and doing things and something slips, nobody will see that happen. So that's good news. We are going to have a Q&A time at the end, so you can ask any of the panelists any kind of questions that you'd like. There are a couple of ways to do that. The first one is to just put it in the chat box at the bottom. There's a little chat box you can just type in. And the second one is a brand new Zoom feature. As far as I know, when we get to the Q&A part, if you press the button in the control bar to raise your hand, I can press a button that lets you speak. So you can actually, we won't see your face still, but you can ask your question out loud as well. Or again, just put it in the chat box at any time. When we get to that point, then we'll be able to pull it out and read it. So without further ado, thanks again. Thanks so much. Tanya, what had we?
Jason. All right, happy holidays, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Jason said, we're really glad to have you here. I'm going to make this real quick and just kind of go through who will be joining us today. First up, we have, well, not first up, first introduction is going to be Pam Reed. She's with Goddess Catering. She's been a longtime friend of Little Help. She'll be doing two recipes with us, a soup and biscuits. And as Jason said, please feel free to cook along with her and make those ingredients. And we will be sending that recipe out to you afterwards as well. Next up, we will have Kathy Baum. She is the book buyer for Tattered Cover here in Denver. She is going to be going over some of the most requested and bought books of 2020, as well as the 2021 must reads. Then we will end with Half Pelican. That will be music by Andy Reiner and Dr. Joy Adams. I'm going to read this, make sure I get everything correct. They play cosmic acoustic grooves influenced by Appalachian, Celtic, Scandinavian, and prehistoric music, which all sounds amazing. I did want to note that Half Pelican is part of a nonprofit called Sound Effects. And I'm going to best quickly pass the kind of camera and video and audio over to Hannah Brown, who is going to represent Sound Effects and just tell you a brief a little bit about Sound Effects.
Hi there. Yes, I'm the program director for Sound Effects. We are a nonprofit project. We're a part of the Partnership for Age-Friendly Communities in Larimer County. And I'm there, yeah. And we bring music and access to music to isolated spaces, different senior care facilities, different individuals at home during the pandemic. And we work with a whole roster of artists across the state who are just fantastic and people who are looking to connect through music. So we are running a lot of, trying to run creative programs and doing lots of partnering this season. And we're so happy to be part of the event today, as well as a Little Help Christmas party last week. and just adding in some music to these fantastic lineups. So thank you so much for having us, and thank you to Half Pelican, who we've worked with before, and we're really excited for you to hear a couple of their renditions on some holiday songs today later on. So thank you so much. Tanya?
Thank you. Thank you, Hannah. All right, well then, last not least, but to start the whole thing off for us is Hal Goldberg. He is a psychologist and a very long-time friend of A Little Help, as well as a long-time volunteer with us. And he is just going to chat a little bit with us about the holidays and just how we get through those mentally. So Hal, can I pass that on to you?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the two pandemics that we're facing right now. The first one is the physical pandemic, COVID-19, that has changed everyone's life more than we could have ever imagined. Now, pandemics are pretty much a natural course of the earth, and we've had pandemics for thousands, tens of thousands, I don't know, years. However, they're new to us. None of us have ever experienced one before, so it doesn't seem like the natural order. So in addition to the physical pandemic, the other pandemic that we are experiencing is the emotional pandemic. In my practice, regardless of the reasons that people came to see me, 100% of my clients are very, talking about the pandemic is taking center stage. And it's not my population that I'm working with either. I mean, I see that in my social group. I see that in my friends. I see that in the family. And both these pandemics cause grief. What grief is, it's what we think and what we feel inside of us when our attachments are threatened or harmed. There's a number of feeling states for this grief. Anxiety, and fear, guilt, anger, and depression. That pretty much covers everything. We have a lot of emotions that are not included in that, but we could include them in it if we wanted to. For example, loneliness may be related to depression, regret may be related to guilt, worry may be anxiety, those kinds of things. Now, these feeling states, fear, guilt, depression, anxiety, are normal, they're healthy, and they are essential. We are experiencing great losses right now. We are separated from our loved ones. We don't have many of our enjoyable activities to do anymore. Many people have financial endangerment. And so many people have had like one in a lifetime events canceled. A wedding, a funeral, a reunion. Think of something that is important to you. Think of something that gives your life meaning. Whatever you are thinking of, in all likelihood, it's been significantly affected or threatened in some way by COVID-19. Our worries. Will I get sick? Will someone I love get sick? And the worst of all, will someone I love die? These unknowns about the future creates incredible amount of anxiety, and we need to express that. And how we express our anxiety is through mourning. Mourning serves a purpose. Through mourning, we get to know ourselves better. We can develop better self-care habits as we learn more about ourselves. We gain clarity about what's important, what really matters in life. We let go of things that don't. For me, I had found that I spent a lot of time and energy interacting with people who were very dear to me at one time in my life. Back from high school friends to work colleagues and people that through my decades I have come close to. And what I find right now is many of those people, the only thing we share is that history. And that's wonderful. And it's fun to say, hey, remember the time when, can you believe this, da, 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 da. But it ends there. So for me, I have let go of those relationships. I haven't let go of them, but I've let go of spending much time on them because I'm preferring to spend time with people who are near and dear to me at this moment and not history. Anyway, my point is that we all have an opportunity to let go of things because we see things a little bit more clearly now. We are realizing what's important. It is critical to talk to others about our fears, about our feelings, about our thoughts. The more we can communicate openly and honestly, the better we'll feel. Find someone you trust. It may be a family member, a friend, a neighbor. A little help does an awful lot of that. A little help has volunteers who will make telephone calls and listen and talk with people. And for some people, that would be huge. So take advantage of that. What we are dealing with this pandemic is not psychological disturbance. This is not a mental health issue. If we are terrified, if we are horribly depressed, if we are rageful, it's a normal realm of emotions for this. This is not something that requires therapy. However, if you don't have anyone you can talk to in your life that you can be open and honest with, maybe it makes sense to look at a professional in that. I'd say that's the last resort. Find people you know first. It's important that we get information that we trust, that we listen to people that we trust. For me, it's the immunologists, it's the epidemiologists, it's the scientists that I trust much more than other sources. It is caring for ourselves. We need to care for ourselves and treat ourselves gently. We need to care for ourselves physically, cognitively, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. Keep all 5 of those in mind. In regard to the physical, it's important to keep moving as much as we can, to move, to stretch, to practice balance, to practice deep belly breathing, to walk around the block if we're able, those kinds of things. Keep moving physically as much as you can. Cognitively, it is critical to learn something new every day. And it is so easy to learn these days. If you're familiar with TED.ed on the internet, these are like 5-minute sort of mini TED Talks that cover everything in the world. It's exciting, it's educational, it buoys me up. Other things people do cognitively is whether it's crossword puzzles or word search or reading interesting books or listening or watching to educational kinds of things on media. Caring for ourselves emotionally, treating ourselves gently, being kind to ourselves, trusting ourselves, and being patient and compassionate with ourselves. It is so typical that we end up beating ourselves up. I spent hours today sitting on the couch, just vegging out. What an idiot I am. Why am I doing this? Not helpful. I spent hours on the couch today just vegging out. How'd that feel? That felt lousy. That's good information. Maybe tomorrow I will make a different choice. So we congratulate ourselves for learning that about ourselves. And that allows us to change. If all we do is beat ourselves up about it, we got the same pattern going tomorrow. Yeah. Social, to keep aware socially, to keep contact up, to call a friend, to reach out to someone, whether it's to give support or whether it's to receive support, to be not only empathetic and compassionate with ourselves, but with people in our life too. And they're so wonderful to stay connected, so easy to stay connected these days with Zoom and Skype and FaceTime, or just the telephone or a text or an email, or to go back to the distant past, writing a letter. I'm finding it much more difficult to stay socially connected now. For instance, when I walk my dog, I live across the street from a park. I walk the dog a couple times a day in the park. And what I used to do was use that as social time. We'd go up and we'd chat with someone I didn't know for a few minutes or a few seconds, or the dogs would romp for a moment, or, I'd have the dog sit and the little kids would pet it. Now, when I see someone walking towards me in a park, I run the other way. I give them a wide berth. I go around the sidewalk, kinds of things. It is much, much more difficult. So we have to find those times and opportunities. And so cognitively, emotionally, socially, physically, and the last one, spiritually. Take care of your spiritual self. For those of you that pray, spend 5 minutes praying. For those of you that find something different to nourish your soul, do that. Meditate for 5 minutes. There are wonderful audios you can find on meditation, guided meditation will take you through it. And I encourage you to start with 3 minutes, work up to 5 minutes. This is not a big commitment, but it's a huge benefit to you. So the trick is to be mindful, to be aware, to be right here, be present this day and this moment. Not to say what we should be doing, but to just realize what we are doing, to recognize that, to be present. Sleep is critical. If you are not sleeping well, figure out how to deal with that. We can deal with anything if we are rested. If anxieties keep you up at night, figure out what to do. Meditation works wonders for many, many people. Other people might want to talk to their physicians and look at some pharmaceutical support. I guess I would see that as a last resort, but it sure is much preferable to not sleeping, isn't it? It is important for us to structure our time. Some people will write the night before how they want the next day to look. I'm going to get up at 8 o'clock. I'm going to read the paper, and then I'm going to eat breakfast, and I'm going to take a shower and get ready for the day. At 10 o'clock, I'm going to call X person. At 11:30, I'm going to catch up on the news, or I'm going to watch something for entertainment's sake. Hobbies are critical. Do you have a hobby? Cooking, sewing, crossword puzzles, jigsaw puzzles. Some people's hobby might be watching sporting events. Watching sporting events is terrific, and it uses time up, and it might bring some enjoyment. My suggestion would be if there's something you can actively participate in, instead of just passively watching something on TV or on your screen, makes a bigger difference. Keep reminding yourself of your history of holiday rituals. We are so sad this holiday season because we can't do so much of what we've done our whole lives. It can be very depressing. Let's try and make peace with that. I know I'm not be able to have the family over. I know I'm not going to be able to watch the grandkids open presents. I know all these things I am not able to do. However, I want to spend my energy thinking about Christmas past or Christmas future. This pandemic will end. That is guaranteed. Life will be back to closer to how we knew it before than ever has been. So spend the holiday nurturing what has been important to you, whether it's making your favorite dish, whether it's watching A Christmas Carol or It's a Wonderful Life or The Grinch or whatever. keep some of those traditions up in your life and give it your best shot to enjoy. And the old adage, 'tis better to give than to receive, we know that's true. We know that is very true. The more we can give of ourselves, the more we can give of our love, it will buoy us. It will make us get through this. Take good care of yourselves. Treat yourselves very gently. And now I have the privilege of introducing Chef Pam Reed. And I'm going to take my screen and go downstairs to my kitchen and cook along
here
with
I
us.
am. Hi, guys. I'm Pam Reed. I'm with Goddess Catering, a longtime friend of my good friend Tanya. She talked to me a couple of weeks ago and knows that I'm a little bit bored and looking for things to do during this pandemic, because the catering business is not exactly lucrative right now, and I'm a little bit bored. So she, of course, roped me in, as she tends to do, into showing you guys some cooking techniques. So today I'm going to make for you two things. One is a soup, which I'm calling chicken taco soup, and the other is flaky biscuits, which of course all soup goes well with biscuits, and biscuits go well with everything. The soup, which I'll talk a little bit about later, my idea behind the soup was to create a soup that you could really use any leftover ingredients in your refrigerator, your pantry, and be able to make something to eat that does not require you to go to the grocery store. I started making soups many years ago because I hate going to the grocery store. And I also hate wasting food. So I really think that that's the beauty of soup, is that it's a good concoction of something that you can just be creative with and make and have something delicious and nourishing and comforting, but not actually have to leave your house, which has always been on my agenda, but now more than ever. Okay, but what I'm going to start with today are the biscuits. I did send recipes to Tanya, so either you have them now or you will be having them. I'm not sure how it all worked out. But we're going to start with 2 cups of flour. And when you measure flour, you really should kind of scoop it into the measuring cup and level it off, rather than dipping the measuring cup into the flour, because you don't want to compact the flour. But really, everything is very forgiving. So if you need to add more milk or more flour at the end, you can always do that. So I put the flour in there, and then baking soda, which it looks like a tablespoon of baking soda, and some salt. Oh, some sugar and salt. I mixed it together. And then just if you take the whisk and you kind of whisk it around in your bowl, then that really mixes it up well before you add the rest of your ingredients. So there's that. And then you cold butter, 6 tablespoons of cold butter. It's important to use cold butter when you are doing any pastry, because you want it, you don't want it to be melty. You want it to hold its shape. My trick with doing biscuits in particular, but also works well with pie crusts or anything where you have to cut the butter in, is to use a box grater and just grate the butter. And if a recipe says cut in small cubes, this is how I get it into small cubes. I just grate it on the cheese grater and kind of hit it. And see, my butter wasn't that cold because I was waiting. So it's a little stuck to the cheese grater. But anyway, we got it. So, and then just kind of fluff the flour. I don't know if you can kind of see, I sort of fluff it around so that there's flour coating each of the little pieces of butter, and then work it with your hands. I think that's the easiest way to do it. You could use a pastry cutter or a couple of knives and go in and do that. That's cutting the butter. If it says cutting the butter, then that's where they get it from, is using 2 knives. but I just kind of pinch it. It's therapeutic for me to just feel flour and butter together, and just kind of keep doing this until, I think I wrote in the recipe, until it's kind of like coarse cornmeal or something like that. Basically, I don't know if you could see this very well, but like this, but maybe a little bit more worked. But for the effort of saving time, I get the flour off my hands. Then you add the milk. And then how I like to work the milk into the flour mixture is with a rubber spatula. The idea is to work it in gently. And with anything that's supposed to be flaky, you do not want to overwork the flour, because it will develop the gluten, and that's what makes it sort of gluey. You want it to fall apart. You want it to be flaky. So you really only want to sort of smash it down, kind of cut it in with this rubber spatula until it's just mixed. And of course, the one I did yesterday was just perfect. But anyway, this is all going to come together pretty well. See how it's starting to form a ball? That's about right. And now, look at that. Imagine that. It worked out. And then that's it. I mean, all you have to do now is just make your biscuits. So I kind of, make sure it's into a ball. Of course, my phone's right here. Good place for it. And put that on the counter. I always do everything on the counter because it's just easier. And then you want a little bit extra flour so that it doesn't stick to your counter or your cutting board or whatever you're using to roll. So I just throw some flour. And then there's two options, I think, for cutting biscuits. Well, first of all, let's talk about making the biscuits. I don't think you need to use a rolling pin. It's just more work and another thing to clean, and you're much more gentle with it if you just pat it down. And the dough is really nice. It just pats down to about 1 inch thick. Now, sometimes what I do is I'll just take this whole disc and put it, I'll move this, and put it on the sheet pan and cut it, just like cut it into eighths. And so it has so you have 8 wedges. And then you really aren't working the dough very much at all. But most people, and traditionally, you'll use a pastry cutter or a glass or something round to make biscuits. And so you just cut them and put them on your baking sheet. I think this is a big size biscuit. Biscuit cutter. I don't know, it's 2 inches or 2.5 or something. So I'm only going to get maybe 8 biscuits out of this dough of this size. The idea too is you don't want to work, like I said, you don't want to work your dough very much. So the less you mess with it, the better. So if you don't have to re-knead it, don't. Otherwise, try to only do it. I think I said in the recipe to only redo it once, but honestly, I hate wasting things. So I usually never follow my own advice, and I just make it till the very end. And just knowing that that last one is probably not going to taste as good as the rest. And it's fine. I'll eat it. So there we go. I got 7 out of it that time. So whatever. And then you just, I think it's good to put something on the top, brush it with some milk, butter. This is some heavy cream. This just makes it nice and golden on the top before you put it in the oven. I preheat it at 425, and we'll check it at about 10 minutes. We'll see how. Set a timer. We'll get someone to set a timer. Okay, so I'm moving on to the soup. And I'm not sure how much time I have, but we'll work it. I'm turning this on. Get your pan nice and hot. And then you put in about 2 tablespoons of, this is canola oil. You can use whatever oil you want. Canola is good because you can cook it at a high temperature. And then onion, I did about 1 onion, bell pepper, and then get that going a little bit. And then add your garlic. You don't want to add your garlic to the super hot oil because you don't want it to burn. So you just get, this is going to take about 5 minutes or so to sort of wilt the onions. And in the meantime, you can, after a couple of minutes, you can add your spices. And you always add the spices to the oil. Don't add it afterwards unless you're just adjusting the seasonings, because dried spices need oil in order to rebloom. Because they're dry, they're dehydrated. So that helps to hydrate them slowly and add that fat back in, and the flavors are going to be much more powerful when you do that. So I just, maybe I should get this so I don't burn myself. I'll show you. I just put all the spices in there. There's chili powder and I put the garlic, fresh garlic, and cumin and coriander, salt, pepper, and some cayenne, which you don't have to add the cayenne, but if you like it spicy, then add the cayenne. And then I think in the notes I said something about be creative, add whatever you want to. Use stuff in your refrigerator. So as I was prepping for today, I found a jalapeno in my refrigerator. So I'm throwing that in, even though it's not on the recipe. And then I found a bunch of kale that was gonna turn and was not really great for a salad anymore. So I'm throwing that in. We'll see how it works. But throw that in now so that it wilts. It's kale, almost, yeah, any vegetable basically you want to throw in at first and let it sort of wilt in and cook with the oils. And it also adds all that extra nutrition. So why not sneak some kale in? When I used to be married several years ago for a very long time, and and my husband hated spinach and really any leafy green. He only would eat it if it was raw, and still he didn't really like it. And so I would always be sneaking spinach into soups, and he would eat it and he would, what is this green stuff? And I used to always tell him it was basil. And he would still eat it because you can't taste it really, it's delicious. But yeah, maybe that's why we're not together anymore, since I lied to him about what I fed him. I don't know. So that's it. This is more information than we all need as normal. Okay, so then we want to start, once that's kind of cooked down and the onions are wilted a bit, you want to add your liquids, and that's a can of diced tomatoes, a can of crushed tomatoes. But again, if you don't have crushed tomatoes and you have 2 cans of diced tomatoes, or vice versa, then fine. Then add what you have. And I put in some chicken broth and a can of black beans. But again, if you have garbanzo beans or pinto beans, or you don't like beans, then put in whatever you have, or don't put it in at all. I drain the juice off the beans just because I don't want the color and all that gook. You can rinse them if you want to, if you really are averse to it, but that sounds like a lot of work. So I put that in there. I've got corn. This is frozen corn. You could use canned corn if you have that in your fridge, or you could use no corn at all, or cut it off the cob, whatever you got. So that's, can we get a little bit of a shot of that? That's sort of what it looks like. And then that's going to just kind of cook down, and I'm going to add 2 chicken breasts. These are just 2 whole chicken breasts. I think I wrote a pound. It's about 2 chicken breasts. If you have leftover meat that you want to use, that's chicken that's already cooked, don't put it in now. If you have, I think I wrote a note, you use leftover steak or ground beef or whatever. If you're using something like that that's already cooked, leave that out now, and I'll explain to you in a second why that is. But that's, so then you just like maybe put a lid on it and let it simmer for about 10 minutes or so to cook the chicken through and to let all the soup flavors kind of meld together. But I have one, I'm just going to turn this off so that I don't forget what I'm doing. I have one that's already done. Well, that's mostly done. That the chicken is done. That's how I don't get it filthy. And then what you want to do is take the chicken out and let that cool just a bit. And in the meantime, this is my other trick to soup that I use all the time. And that is, let me grab one of these containers that had onions in it or something, is that I take some of the soup and I blend it. And it adds a different texture to it that makes it just so much heartier, and the flavors all melt together better. It's a trick that really works, but that's why you don't want to add cooked meat to the soup earlier, because you don't want to blend that up. So that's the idea there. So I added, I think I said 2 cups. That's a little bit more than 2 cups because this is a quart container. And you could use a blender or a food processor if you wanted to. If you're putting it in a blender, make sure the soup isn't super hot. But this is an immersion blender, and it's just easier to use. And if you wanted to, you could just use the immersion blender right in your soup pot. But this gives you a little bit more control over how much of it is blended if you measure it out first. And then you put it back in. And then you, and this should be a little bit cooler. You shred the chicken with 2 forks or your hands or whatever. And then you put the chicken back in the soup. Pretend it was all shredded. I don't feel like doing that right now. And you can just let it cook for a little bit longer to make sure all the chicken is got all the flavors on there and it's delicious. And then look at that. You got soup. I'll get a couple bowls out. What's the question? Am I going to pass along? Oh yeah, that's going past, sure. Sorry, I'm confused with notes. I can't do 2 things at one time. So there's soup. You could garnish it with whatever you want, or nothing at all. Scallions, cheese, chips, and then there you go. Easy peasy. I'm gonna check on my biscuits, and then I'm gonna pass it along to Kathy at the Tattered Cover. And look at that, the timing is almost perfect. My biscuits need just a couple more minutes. Anyway, thank you for having me. I hope you learned something. I hope I didn't bore you guys to death. And I am passing it along to Kathy at the Tattered Cover, who's gonna tell us about all of the books that we should have read this year and we ought to read next year. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Pam. And can everyone hear me okay? I guess so. I think so. I appreciate you guys having me. And I really love that cooking demonstration. I'm super hungry for biscuits now. And I did learn a couple of great tips, especially about the butter that I can't wait to try. My name is Kathy Baum, and I work at the Tattered Cover. I buy our adult books, so we do have another buyer who buys the children's books. We typically, in a normal year, have tons of in-person events, but since that is not happening right now, I'm really grateful to be able to be with you in this format, and to share with you some of our favorites of this fall from our customers and also some of our staff. So I'm going to share a slideshow just with the book covers on them, because I think it's easier for me to remember things if I can visually see the cover. However, if you are just listening in, don't worry, there will be a list of these books given to you as well. So no need to try to keep track. So let me see if I can get you to my slides without creating any issues. Okay. So the first section that I thought I'd highlight are a couple of our good fiction books. And the first one is by Jane Smiley. She's a Pulitzer winning author. And this is a really lovely, sweet book about a horse named Perestroika who breaks out of her stall and meets an elegant dog named Frida. And they encounter a human boy named Etienne. So the three of these guys go and explore Paris, and also go to the house where Etienne's 100-year-old great-grandmother lives. So this is a really sweet novel that celebrates curiosity and the desire for all creatures for true love and freedom. The next book on the fiction list that has been a really big seller for us this fall is called The Cold Millions by Jess Walter. He also wrote a book called The Beautiful Ruins. If you happen to be familiar with that, it came out a couple of years ago. And according to a review in the Boston Globe, this book features an unforgettable cast of cops and tramps, suffragists and socialists, madams and murderers, and it's a powerful, moving book from a new writer, from a new American author. So those are two fiction highlights. Going to two collections of essays that are out right now. One is from Toni Morrison, and this collection is called The Source of Self-Regard, and it includes some of her most important essays and speeches over the last 4 decades. It's really an essential collection from an essential writer. It includes some of her most famous essays, including a prayer she wrote for the dead of 9/11, her Nobel lecture on the power of language, and her eulogy for James Baldwin. So it's a really beautiful collection of work. And if you're looking for something a little bit more humorous and funny, essayist David Sedaris, who you might know either from The New Yorker or dozens of other magazines, and he's also sometimes on CBS Sunday Morning. He has compiled a collection of some of his best writing over the years, and this is a really funny volume. I think it's good to read yourself if you're looking for a little humor, and I think this one is a great gift to give too. In our nonfiction books, this is probably one that you've heard of, but A Promised Land by Barack Obama was released in November. It has certainly been a huge seller. It is volume 1, and volume 2 will come out, I guess, in the next couple of years. I think he's a little bit of a slower writer because he's very detailed. This is 700 pages long, but he is a good storyteller. So each chapter sort of reads like a really good story. So it is very interesting. And the next nonfiction book, this is a paperback that came out. It's called 3 Days at the Brink. It's by Brett Beyer. And it has been called elegantly written, brilliantly conceived, and impeccably researched. And it shows readers a way to freshly understand how the Tehran Conference shaped world history. And to Hal's comment earlier about continuing to learn something, this is something about the Tehran conference that I didn't know, so I'm looking forward to picking this up as well and learning something new. There is also a collection of poetry. If you're into poetry, Margaret Atwood is a novelist best known for The Handmaid's Tale. But she's also a poet, and this is her first collection of poetry that's been released in 10 years. So it's kind of a big deal. It's a really lovely book. She covers things like love, loss, the passage of time, the nature of nature, and you expect a lot of that from poets, but she also touches a little bit on zombies, which is kind of fun. And two cookbooks that are really popular. We are talking about comfort food today and soups, and Ina Garten, who is the Barefoot Contessa on the Food Network. She has a new cookbook out. It's got a lot of recipes in, some simple, some a little bit more complex, lots of good pictures. So even if you don't cook anything, sometimes I like to look at the pictures in this. And lastly, if you are a sweet person, we have a great book that has been very popular this fall called Dessert Person. And it's broken out into, the chapters are broken out into different types of baked goods. So there's one chapter on pies, one chapter on tarts, one chapter on cookies, etc. And the chapters are organized from the most simple to the most complex recipes. So if you're in the mood for just a 3-ingredient thing, then that's in there. But if you're in the mood to try something a little bit more different, then that's available in this book too. And a couple of quick previews for 2021. There are many hundreds of thousands of books that come out every year. So I can't wait to see what 2021 holds in the world of books, but these two I think will be really great reads. There's one called Better Luck Next Time. It's from an author named Julia Claiborne Johnson, and I was lucky enough to get an advance copy of this. It's set in the 1930s at a divorce ranch in Reno, Nevada. And I thought this was just a really fun escape, and I was in the mood for a little bit more of a feel-good read. And this has been called a quote-unquote feel-good literary comedy Western. So it's a little bit of everything. And then lastly, I know some of you might be familiar with an author named Kristen Hanna. She writes a lot of historical fiction. One of her most popular books is The Nightingale, if you've heard of that. And she has a new book coming out in February, early February, February 2nd, called The Four Winds. And this is a novel set in the Great Depression where the main character must choose between staying in Texas and enduring the Dust Bowl or moving to California in search of a better life. So that's a little bit of a taste of what we have coming up for next year and for this year. Our stores are open. We have limited hours, but you can always call us, and maybe if you're in the mood for something, you can get it over the phone and see if someone can go and do a curbside pickup for you. But I hope that this winter lets you curl up with a good book. And yeah, that's it. Please let me know if you have any questions. And again, we will send out a list of these for all of you. I will turn it over now. I'm not sure if we're doing Q&A or music.
I think we're going to go right to music, though. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, everyone. Hal, Pam, Kathy, this was amazing. I know we've kind of already been hunkered in because of COVID, but I personally can't wait to hunker in even more and make soups, biscuits, and read lots of good books. So next up on our list is Half Pelican, and they're going to play some holiday songs for us to kind of end out our session. I'm not really sure any of us will get back on, but please do, if there are things that come up in the chat and with questions, we will after Half Pelican is done. playing their songs. If not, I really thank you to all of you for joining us and being a part of A Little Help. So I'll pass it over to Half Pelican so we can enjoy some holiday music.
Hey, we're just looking for permission to start our video. Do we have permission?
There we go. Nope.
Permission. Ah, here we go.
There we
Yes. Let's make us big so we can see that you can see us. Excellent. Yay. Well, we are feeling festive. As you can see, we have our dinosaur Santa shirts. So here we go. Some seasonal music.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly We're going to very quickly switch instruments. Give us 30 seconds.
All right. We've got double mandolins for you now. That's right. It's not Carol of the Bells, it's Carol of the Plinks. Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Let's make it a thing. All right.
1, 2, 3, 2.
Carol of the bells, carol of the planks, you decide.
And then we're going to finish with one of my all-time favorite Christmas carols, and you may sing along if you know it. This is Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light. From now on, our troubles will be out of sight. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Make the Yuletide gay. Next year, all our troubles will be miles away. Here we are, as in olden days, happy golden days of yore. Faithful friends who are dear to us, gather near to us once more. Someday soon we all will be together, if the fates allow. Until then we'll have to muddle through somehow. So have yourself a merry little Christmas now.
Haha. Oh, that was so
Thank
fun.
you. Thank you. Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you. That was just beautiful. Beautiful voice. Again, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today. Thank you for supporting A Little Help and being a part of A Little Help. We do have another talk next month, January 20th. And I really do hope you'll all join us again. We will be doing talks from A Little Help twice a month. Until probably the next coming year, and we hope you join us. Just look on our website,